2023 was the first year that Hoka started using premium Peba racing foams in the shoes, and it's making up for lost time with a slew of Peba offerings. The latest is this 5K, 10K racer that is all Peba, no plate. This is the Hoka Cielo Road. Yo, what's going on everybody? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I'm gonna talk to you guys about the Hoka Cielo Road. Now, before I give you my thoughts on this shoe, I do wanna go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Hoka sent to me for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for them. However, no one's paying me to make this video or to use the shoe, and no one's gonna get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Hoka Cielo Road. First, let's talk about some specs on the shoe. This is a 33mm stack height shoe with a 3mm drop, giving us 30mm of stack height in the forefoot. And in this shoe, we've got nothing but pure Peba racing foam goodness. There's no plate in this shoe. There's no other stabilizing elements. It's just you and this racing foam. Now, this shoe does have some other signature Hoka elements. It is curled at the forefoot, so that way the foot strike rolls a little bit easier through that gait cycle. And on the outsole, we have a lot of exposed midsole foam plus durabrasion rubber. On the upper, there is recycled content in the mesh here, but it is a very stripped down, very basic upper, extremely breathable, basically see-through, and there are some kind of underlying structural elements throughout the forefoot of the shoe as well. Kind of reminds me, at least visually, of the really old, at this point, Hoka racing flat, the Tracer, if you guys remember that shoe. Now, moving to the back of the shoe, there is very little structure in this shoe. It's very floppy, which is exactly what I like to see when it comes to racing shoes. But they do have a couple of little bumper pads on each side here to make sure that your heel stays nice and snug in there inside the shoe. As far as the tongue goes, it's a lot of things that I like to see. It's very thin, it's also very breathable, and it generally stays out of the way, but it is not gusseted, so in my experience, it did kind of take a little bit of work to get into, to get it settled in correctly, and at least on some of my runs, the tongue kind of like scooched around a little bit in some non-desirable ways, although it didn't end up causing any pain or discomfort. Now, overall, this shoe comes in at a very light weight of 7.5 ounces and 213 grams. Now that we've gone over some of the specs for the shoe, let's talk about what it was like to actually run in it. It is a speedy shoe, and I enjoyed running in the Peba goodness. It provides a lot of that great cushion, but also responsiveness, so that way you're not getting stuck. It's not mushy. It's springy in terms of the fact that it squishes and moves a lot, but it also rebounds a lot and decompresses in a nice and pleasant way as well. However, I will say that I didn't really get the sense from this shoe that it was like a 5K, 10K racing shoe or a road flat like Hoka's kind of positioning it to be. For me, I kind of had like a couple of different sensations that kind of took away from that race day feel. The main thing is, it feels like there's a lot of midsole stack height in the midfoot and in the heel. I'm definitely feeling that 33mm of stack height, which is really nice. And even though there's only a 3mm drop in this shoe, it kind of felt like there was a bunch of stack height in the midfoot, and then it kind of slammed down into the forefoot. And so it felt a little bit kind of cumbersome in terms of that transition from midfoot to forefoot, and I found myself either needing to be all the way up on my toes or kind of midfoot to almost heel striking. And because it doesn't have that kind of like aggressive get on your toes kind of sensation to it, the shoe overall felt to me like it was more of like a speedy daily trainer rather than it was a road racing flat. What I really wanted was an update to the Carbon Rocket, which came out, I think, back in 2019. But instead, what I feel like we got it was just kind of a non-plated workout shoe, which there's nothing wrong with that, but that's also not exactly how I would describe a 5K, 10K racer. I also did take this shoe out onto the track to see if it would make for a suitable longer track session type of shoe. And I felt like it worked out really well over there, but I will say that on the track, it felt like it lacked a little bit of kind of horsepower, a little bit of oomph. I kind of wanted there to be a little bit of extra springiness in there, whether it was from tinkering with the dimensions of the midsole, maybe tinkering with the drop or the stack heights, or maybe just adding some sort of plate to it. I felt like it just kind of felt a little bit flat and I wanted something a little bit more. It doesn't necessarily have to be a plate, but that would probably be one of the kind of easier things to add in terms of getting that extra level of kind of excitement in the shoe when you're going at those faster paces that you might see on the track. And so ultimately, I feel like the Cielo Road is a really good shoe, but it's not the shoe that Hoka is telling us it is. And I feel like overall, it seems to be a really big theme in 2023 that like the shoe names just don't match up with the shoes that we're given. We saw it earlier with Saucony and the Kinvara Pro. We also saw it within Hoka itself earlier this year when it released the Mach X. And then for this Cielo Road, I really feel like the Cielo line within Hoka is reserved for their track spikes. And so when I hear Cielo, I think of something that is at the pinnacle of their racing technology. And that just doesn't feel like what this is. Instead, what I really feel like this is a really great Rincon 4 or maybe a Rincon X, even though I think with Hoka X means plate, even though the Mach X uses Peba as a plate and not a real carbon fiber plate. But naming conventions aside, it seems more like a Rincon to me than it does a Cielo. And so I feel like part of my kind of tepid response to this shoe is just the fact that like it's kind of confusing me a little bit with the naming and the positioning of the shoe. I think that if you're looking for a 5K, 10K road racing shoe, this is a decent option, but I feel like if you're looking for an upgrade to the Rincon and want kind of like a souped up version of that, a Peba version of the Rincon, the Cielo Road is the exact shoe that you're looking for. Before I conclude and wrap up the video, I do want to make two other quick notes. The upper fits really well. And so Hoka has been, in my opinion, having a little bit of inconsistency in terms of their sizing. Sometimes I need to go up to a 9.5. Sometimes I stay with my usual 9.5, and that's the exact right size for me. This time I went with the size 9, and I feel like it's a really good size 9 for me. There's actually more room in this size 9 than I think Hoka typically gives for some of its faster shoes. And so I feel like the sizing is excellent. I love the way that this shoe feels on foot, but I'm as equally disappointed in the outsole performance. Now, this is something that I saw with the Rocket X2 as well. The Durabrasion rubber that they're using this year, 2023, I don't know if there's been some changes or what, but I find like even though there is a lot of rubber that's here on the midsole, when surfaces are a little bit wet, I find that the traction just disappears on this shoe. So the exact level of wetness that I'm talking about is just how wet an aid station gets during your road races. That level of wetness, that is kind of kryptonite for the Cielo Road and the Rocket X2. I experienced it racing in the Rocket X2 and in my testing in the Cielo Road. I just don't like the rubber outsole that they're using in 2023 for their racing options, and I wanted to point that out for you guys. All right, now let's wrap up the video and talk about some other shoes that I think that the Cielo Road, if you like what this package presents, some other shoes that you can use to build out a rotation around this shoe. And then let's also talk about some of the competition in the market as I go into the buying guide and some recommendations. First, let's talk about some other shoes that you could pair it with. If you really like this idea of like a Rincon 4 or a Rincon X, I think for your easy days, your cruisy long runs and your recovery runs, I think you can stay within the Hoka family and go with the Clifton 9. I really love what they've done with the compression molded EVA this year. I feel like it's better than ever. I also feel like I've been saying that every single year with the Clifton since number 6. So I feel like they are on a long string of very solid improvements. I feel like it's lighter than ever too. And I just enjoy running and logging miles in the Clifton 9. I feel like that would be a nice pairing. And then for racing, you could certainly go with the Rocket X2, but I think that there's another shoe that's kind of on another level above it that I think would also work well if you're a Cielo Road lover. And I think that's going to be one of my favorite racing shoes, the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus. I feel like this shoe has that level of a large amount of premium racing foam in that forefoot, and it's got a carbon fiber plate to give you that extra pop. And I think it does it in a really efficient racing package. So if you're training and doing some of your workouts in the Cielo Road, I feel like the transition over to the Metaspeed Sky Plus is going to be very nice and pleasant for you. All right, now let's talk about some pricing options and some competitors. The Cielo Road, I believe, is out now and it retails for $160. And I feel like for a 5K, 10K racer, that's probably about the right price. But then again, I'm not sure that this is a 5K, 10K racer. Let's take a look at some of the competition to see where it stands. I think that the natural competitor for this shoe, in my mind, is the Topo Cyclone 2. This is also another all Peba, no plate midsole shoe. And it is really fun to do fast workouts in, and I think you could probably take it for some 5K, 10K racing. The Topo Cyclone 2, which I think is a very underrated shoe for this year, probably one of the most underrated shoes for 2023. That one retails at $150, and I think $150 is a fantastic price for that shoe, so definitely that makes the $160 for the Cielo Road feel a little bit high. Now, the other shoe that I think also warrants comparison, and the shoe that I kind of feel like with the way that Hoka was describing the Cielo Road, what it should have felt more like, is the Adidas Adizero Adios 8. Now, it does have some plastic on the bottom in terms of stabilizing element to make sure that the squishy premium racing foam that's only in the forefoot of this shoe doesn't get too squirrely underfoot. But it's not a carbon fiber plate, so you're not getting that kind of like carbon springiness if that's something you're looking to specifically avoid. And for the shorter distance, I feel like the kind of the low slung nature of this and the speedy nature of this Adios 8 makes it definitely a worthy competitor to the Cielo Road. And the Adizero Adios 8 comes in at a retail of $130, so that's quite a substantial discount for a shoe that I feel like kind of delivers a little bit better than the Hoka Cielo Road does, even though on paper the Cielo Road has all the more premium kind of like accoutrement. So those are my thoughts on the Hoka Cielo Road, a shoe that I was really excited about, and it is a pretty good shoe, but ultimately for me falls just a little bit short. But let me know what you guys think if you run in this shoe. I'd love to hear some feedback from you guys, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday right here on the Kofuzi Run Club channel on YouTube. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?